Hi, Thomas. How are you?
Hi, Ash. I'm good, thanks. Yourself?
Good, good, good. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you.
This time at a webinar.
After, yeah, I think it's first one we do together.
Yes, yes, yes. Looking forward
Very
to
excited. Yeah, me too. It changes from the in-person conferences and chit
yeah,
chat.
yeah.
Let's see if we like this one as well.
Very different from this.
I don't know if we can see if people are already connected or not. I see one in the chat. We can leave like an additional minute or two.
yes,
Maybe if some people are online, they can just write something in the chat so we know if we are alone and if we. Okay.
yes, I can see some people typing.
Same here. Okay, I really like a bunch of people. That's good. It's already 4:02. I think we can probably start. Hola, some pressure on me directly, Alexandra. Thank you. Darina, hello, Darina. Good to have you on the webinar. Okay, then maybe we can start. Ash, you still with me?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here. I'm ready to go.
Okay, then let's go. So just an official welcome to this AppTweak and AVO webinar, where we're going to cover today some areas around the topic of finance app in general and what are the strategies for 2025. My name is Thomas. I lead the consultancy department here at AppTweak. Prior to that, I led different app growth and marketing teams. So I was on the app side. I was an AppTweak client as well in my last 3 jobs, so I've used a lot the tool. I have a bit of experience as well in OEM, and today I'm lucky enough to have Ash with me. So Ash is one of AVO co-founder. So first of all, thanks a lot for being with us today, and welcome. You will have time to present AVO, Ash. So today, or just now, if you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself so the audience know who you are and what you've done before.
Definitely. Thank you, Thomas, and thank you, AppTweak, for hosting us. My name's Ashwin Shekhar. I am originally from India, but currently based in Berlin. I've been in the app and mobile ecosystem for around 14 years now. I started in 2011, so it's been a while. My core competency has been helping build business teams in the ad tech on the user acquisition side and on the mobile monetization side. I started AVOW around 7 years ago with a few other co-founders, and before that, I was at Glispa and at InMobi.
Great. It's true that we've met at that time, the good old times of the ad network. Yeah. So in today's webinar, we want to bring your attention to some insights. We've collected some data, best practices over the finance category in the App Store. Obviously, we want to take our company angle, right? So whether it's from our own database, share accurate insights, or directly coming from the work we've done with our clients. So we will quickly be presented what our companies are doing so the audience understand the context of the metrics we will be showing and what we will showcase in general, even as global insights. So about AppTweak, for the one that don't know AppTweak, we're an App Store marketing and intelligence platform. So we've been helping mobile growth team for more than a decade now, growing their apps over the stores. We have a suite of tools like our leading ASO intelligence. We also have, I'm looking at the screen now, the market intelligence that allow you to do in-depth market analysis, the app review manager, that is an AI-supported tool to manage your review smarter than before. We are now a proud Apple Ads partner and not Search Ads partner anymore. And so we have a tool that allows you to buy Apple inventory and optimize your campaign and manage your campaign with our tool. And of course, we have a tailored consulting service team, the one I'm leading, that is accessible to all our enterprise clients. So long story short, what we are trying to do is to help you gain additional visibility and improve your conversion rate within the app stores.
Great. Okay. So AVOW is a global app growth marketing company specified in mobile OEMs. Before we jump into what we do, I'd first like to take this time to define what a mobile OEM is. A mobile OEM is basically an original equipment manufacturer, which means anyone like a Samsung, Huawei, Xiaomi, anyone on the Android ecosystem who builds and manufactures mobile is what we consider mobile OEM. Mobile OEMs advertising is something which is new. It is considered untapped inventory, and it is also considered to be a bit complex. And that's why we're here today, where AVOW acts as a one-stop solution for advertisers to help tap into mobile OEMs. Currently, we reach around 1.5 billion daily active users. We do around 10 million monthly installs, and we aggregate 11 OEMs globally across the world. Finance is one of our strongest vertical, Thomas, because we work with close to around 50 to 60 clients apps around the world. And for them in 2024 alone, we delivered around 41,000 FTDs. What is an FTD? FTD is basically a first time deposit, and which is the elixir for growth for any finance app looking to increase their user base. If you take any finance app, the first thing is like, what is my FTD? And this is what we do.
Yeah, I think even some will challenge that. You need to look after that, but it's impressive already. 41,000 first-time deposits under your belt. Thanks a lot for the intro. Then let's move to the agenda. So today it's pretty straightforward, right? We will cover obviously the category. Then we will deep dive in the different regions, and to finish up with some success stories, both from AppTweak and AVOW, with big players in the category. And we should have enough time at the end for questions. So feel free to add question in the chat. We have a moderator team that will also collect the question. And we will try to cover as many as possible. If we don't have the time, note that everything after the webinar or tomorrow, you will receive the recording of the webinar with some link to content, some decks, blog posts, and so on. So you will have additional information. And Ash, I will speak for the two of us, but if you have any burning question after the webinar, feel free to contact us as well on LinkedIn or through the email that you will get from our marketing team. Before we deep dive in the agenda, I wanted just to give an important distinction that I see in the finance category, right? Because we talk about fintech a lot, but the finance app category is not just fintech, right? So for me, we have two clear types of players, what we call internally the app first and the app supported players, right? So both of them are operating mobile application, right? So they're all mobile player, but the approach that they have in user acquisition is quite different because of the maturity of their product, the app, the industry itself, or the sub-industry in which they take part of, and the agility that they have as a team, or the digital first thinking. I'll expand a little bit more. So the app first for me are clients like any crypto app, N26, Revolut. So the app is really the core of the usage. You need to have the app to use the product itself, right? So they usually have a very complex and vast tech stack and tooling, and they're really fast moving when it comes to mobile strategy, right? They are usually on top of the game and so on. And then we have the app supported one that are digitalizing, if I can say, their product. So they usually have multiple apps per brand, one app per product. The apps are usually for existing users, so they don't really consider the store as a UA channel or even a brand awareness channel. And what we see is usually lower adoption when it comes to mobile UA strategy. All right, so in the audience, whether you're from app first or app supported, you should have insight that can help you foresee the future of your product, of your role, of your work, the tests that you can do. Hopefully put a bit more pressure on becoming an app first if you're app supported. But that's a more extensive discussion we can have later on. So for the category, we've mentioned that finance is a hyper challenging category. It's one of the most competitive and unpredictable category in the App Store. So I tried, Ash, to simplify a little bit everything, and I created 5 points that we can discuss here. I'm very keen on having your opinion on that. The first one, bold statement: the competition is relentless.
Yeah, I think, like you said, everywhere across the globe, fintech finance apps are growing across the world. And the main way to discover these finance apps has been on the App Store. So there is heavy competition on the Apple and Google Play Store. And then the other way to differentiate themselves is via user acquisition strategies and so on. This being said, competition is very, very high in any market you take, whether it's Germany, whether it's France, or even Southeast Asia and India. Competition on finance app is very heavy, because once you acquire a user, the users tend to stay for long. So it's always about trying to find somebody, because you don't change your bank every day like you change your game, right? So it's about getting the user first.
Yeah, and I think we will cover that probably down the line, but it's also linked with the high cost for your first time deposit and so on, because obviously all the onboarding process is heavier. It takes more time. You need to put trust in, and you don't want to replicate that every week and try a new app or a new product, right? The second one is around volatility. So obviously volatility drives reactive behavior, which adds some challenges. What's your take on volatility for finance app?
Someone who's invested in the crypto and in the finance ecosystem, I can say volatility is constant. Like, for example, when the Wall Street bets or the roaring kitty for GameStop cause heavy volatility, and this affects the apps also. While you think, hey, it's only the stock market which is volatile, you will be very surprised to know that, hey, volatility in the stock market or crypto markets can affect user experience on the apps also. And this also added by regulation changes. Tomorrow, if the government adds something in terms of regulation, this can affect the entire flow of an onboarding campaign for an app. So these volatility changes makes fintech even more complicated, but it is the name of the game.
Yeah, I think even more globally, the world's events, right? So I'm also playing a little bit with crypto, at least at my humble level. And I remember when Trump was elected, like the impact that it had on all the market, like even the intent were massive. We saw like huge spike of search intent for Ethereum, Bitcoin. It's crazy, like, and it has nothing to do directly with the app, right? Yeah. And it's true that if you compare that with another category, with an e-commerce or with hyper casual games, Candy Crush search intent will not skyrocket when Trump gets elected, exactly. Right? So, yeah, that's something very specific to finance. Another thing that is maybe not specific to finance, but I think it's very hard to change the perception. It's on the reputation, right? So it's, that on the store, it's very easy to lose reputation. Things go fast. For a financial app, it's another story, right?
Exactly. For finance, also reputation, especially when it comes to money and somebody's own money, the app reputation is very, very important, right? And this is why app developers strive so hard to keep their ratings up and keep their reputation solid and intact, because this is the natural way for you to pull organic users. It's either by word of mouth or people who go to the App Store landing page and see, hey, what's the rating? Yeah. Is this a trusted company where I can put my money in? End of the day, this is important.
Yeah, the rating is one, and then imagine if you have a review that is like a display by Google saying that your product is not trustworthy or that you have a leak or whatever. Yeah. I think no one is downloading the app. Another one, obviously very important one, the acquisition cost. We will deep dive, but they're among the highest in the stores in general.
Yeah, so CAC or customer acquisition cost are generally very high for finance, because it's a trust-based acquisition, and it is not an acquisition where you have customers coming through a revolving door. Once you get them, you tend to keep them, right? So while acquisition is very high, we've seen it based on our internal benchmarks to go from market to market for up to $400 also. But on an average, fintech customer acquisition cost to acquire one customer is around $1,400 which is very, very high.
Yeah, it's mad.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will deep dive obviously, but every metrics that we will share alone doesn't mean much. It's good to compare them with other category and understand that the global cost of acquisition is crazy high when you take all those things into account. And the last one is the internal complexity at pressure, right? So for me, what I mean by that is like we know that most of the marketing team are under-resourced, right? We have a complex tech stack, sometimes complex marketing mix as well, or very diverse. You usually work in silo, at least when it comes to product versus marketing, and sometimes within the marketing org as well. Some apps will just start building the ASO or UA function, yet expectation for finance app are crazy high, right? Because also of the money that is invested. So for me, it's also something that is very specific to financial app. I don't know if you have anything to add there, but I don't see that in any other vertical, or not as much.
Not really, nothing much to add, but yes, because of regulations, there's constant changes, and this adds layer on layer for marketing teams and for user acquisition teams to be able to jump through from one layer to another. So complexity is always there with fintech apps.
So let's deep dive in a bit of metrics as well, right? So the graph that you see here is taken from our campaign manager. So that's from iOS, from Apple Ads. Again, I want to insist on the fact that it's one metric in isolation, but here we are comparing with others with the same source, right? So what you see here is that finance is the second most expensive category for us, at least, and what we see on Apple Ads, with an average CPI close to $9, right? So again, it shows the intensive competition, something that you don't see here, but that you mentioned, and I think you will mention later down as well, is the long conversion cycle that you see in the finance app, right? So if you're an e-commerce, it's easier for you to have a download and then have an add to cart and a direct sales or something like this, right? For finance, it's sometimes more complex to see the first time deposit. I guess it's not real time, or except if you have some crazy offers. And then something that we will not deep dive fully, but that could also explain all of that, it's the fraud and the gamification that we can see also in the financial app. Another metric here, it's even before in the funnel, is the CPT, so same source. I found those metrics crazy, honestly. For all categories worldwide, the average CPT is less than $1. For finance, in average, is $3.11, so more than 3 times the global average. And then when you go to the most competitive market like the UK, you have a CPT, an average CPT, again, it's an average, that goes above $7. That's, for me, crazy to see, even though it's just the early metrics, right? And we're not even talking about what you've mentioned with the 1.4K total cost of acquisition. How difficult is it to capture a specific intent of a user?
Yeah, reflecting on your iOS, I also put some data together on the CPIs for Android. One thing which you will notice is Android is way cheaper. It's still comparatively high compared to other verticals, but it is way cheaper than the iOS. But just keep in mind, this is only the CPI. This does not tell the true story of the customer acquisition cost. The true cost is reflected by what is your CAC or what is your cost per acquisition of a new customer. We'll dive into a few numbers later, but I'd like to jump into a few more insights on Android.
Yeah, I think it's needed to have a deep dive later on. When we expose also a benchmark like this, in my opinion, it's tricky to have a real benchmark on CPA or CAC, because you will have different metrics or post-install event that you will look at, right? So some company will look at first-time deposit, as you were mentioning. Sometimes it would be I don't know, a cashback, an LTV metric, like a bank account created, whatever. Every company, I think, in the audience will have different CPA or North Star, but maybe not a North Star because it will always be revenue, but at least their main acquisition metric.
Yes. There are reasons why the CPI is so low, but the customer acquisition cost is as high as it, right? Some of the reasons are, firstly, I think the Android store is super competitive. If you take the Google Play Store alone, it has twice or thrice the number of what the iOS store has, and it has around 3.5 million apps. And this is because the Android ecosystem is so fragmented. You get devices from $100 to up to $1,500. There is also the problem of volume without value. Generally, there is a saying that, hey, iOS users are way more valuable, but we also see in emerging markets, in markets like this, there are high installs, but low downstream conversions. For example, when we see a much higher conversion rate from install to know your customer in Europe than when you look at install to know your customer in emerging markets. So there is a high drop off in this. But this is something which you need to take into consideration when it comes to Android and so on. The third point is the security and concern. While Google has been at the forefront of helping and trying to curb this, it is very natural that it was very easy to upload your app on Google Play Store. And this is why it became an ecosystem which is as big as it is, because it was easy to that. And this led to a lot of fraudulent and fake apps coming in. Obviously, now everybody's taking a lot of stringent measures on this, and this is going down with Google's trusted apps and so on. But this is still a reason on why some of the problems you're facing are because of these legacy problems.
You have a bunch of additional insights for Android lovers.
So the other thing is, with this entire Google ecosystem and with the market being so fragmented, what these device manufacturers and so on have started doing is like, hey, we can build a closed ecosystem with a much higher security system and much more trusted, like what the Samsung is building with their Samsung Galaxy Store, Xiaomi is building with their Get App Store, and so on. The other point to consider is the platform divergence in UA. Right, like I said, Android users can start from $100 and go up to devices which are at $1,500 to $1,800. Whereas if you look at an entry point of an iPhone, it is always around $600, $700. And this creates a very tough situation for an Android marketer to say, hey, am I tapping into the right audience? So this is also very important, right? You need to build your Android user acquisition strategy into tier 1 audience, tier 2 audience, depending on how you can target them and how you can target the right users with the right products you have. And this is one of the biggest challenges we see on the Android ecosystem.
Yeah, sending us back to the old day of user acquisition when you had the choice to pick the brand of your phone when you're setting campaigns and the version of it.
Exactly. This is still existent very much.
Yeah, no. I set up some campaign on TikTok not too long ago. A few things are still there.
Yeah.
Boomer speaking. Thanks. Let's go to the regional market insight now. So we can deep dive a little bit because I think they are all very specific, or at least they have some specificities. None of them should be tackled the same way. I'll pass you the mic for Europe first. So let's start with Europe. What are your take on Europe's specificities?
So Europe, like the headline says, a saturated trust-focused market, has two major problems. I think the major challenges which we have are regulations. While everyone hates regulations, I think it's very, very important for a finance app in Europe to survive and to grow. They need to be regulated. So the two major regulations we have is GDPR, which gives customers a lot of protection in terms of data collection, privacy, and so on. So for a fintech app which is collecting personal details, what is your bank statement, and all of this, it is very, very important for them to be GDPR compliant. In Germany, for example, we have the BaFin, which goes in strictly and regulates every single bank on this. The other major regulation is the PSD2, which is the Payment Services Directive. What does this do for banks? Is it makes their lives very complicated when it comes to the login process, or when it comes to the dependency on two apps. If you're using a traditional bank, you would have seen that there are generally a two-factor authentication. So you have your first app, and then you have a second app where you need to do your two-factor authentication. All of this is because of these mandates of customer authentication and so on. And this makes it very, very complicated. But this is also lies on the side of expectation of customers, right? Customers also expect that fintech apps should match their traditional banks in terms of fraud protection, in terms of reliability. And this is what adds to this layer of expectations from customer. The other fact is, given the fact that Europe is so segregated with different languages and different localized compliance, they also expect multi-language support, localized support. When they go to the app store, they want to understand, hey, is the app relevant for them? And this is where I think you have something to add here, but I think this is another expectation from customers on how do you tackle this.
Yeah, no, it's true, and it's we mentioned that several times already, but it's more important than for the category, I think, because again, you play with your money, your safety, and so we've just released like a few weeks back our 2025 ASO trends and benchmark reports, and we analyzed the top 1,000 apps in each region. What we see in Europe is like Germany, France, and Spain are the top 3 countries where the app localize the most their metadata. So if we deep dive a little bit here, we see what those apps are trying to achieve when they optimize and they localize their metadata. So in Germany, the user, they expect professional design, but they expect privacy reinsurance, and they want localized content that make them feel that they're really on the German store and that they understand what's Germany in that ecosystem. In Spain, the user, they respond positively to local financial behavior and values, like the family saving, right? So it's very different. And then in France, they want to have something that is locally adapted, and they want to have those language nuances. So French, you can hear my accent, I speak French. They have a lot of nuances, and it's very important to use the right word if you don't want to be perceived scammy or fishy, right? And then in the UK, you have financial compliance. So it's very tangible and pragmatic, but you need that to have trust. So I have one example for you, big player. I think they were third at that time in the finance app in Germany. It's PayPal, right? And so what they've done using AppTweak is, instead of just translating their screenshots, they localize their screenshots. So for us, there is a difference between translating something and localizing something. And we even go one step further sometimes with culturalization. How do you culturalize something? Here, what you see on the left is the US screenshot, so in English. And you see the first screenshot is the value, the 5% cashback. You see the German version. I'll give you the translation now, but you can already see that it's not a direct translation, right? It's a localization. So what they did here is that PayPal translated the screenshot in German, obviously, but they addressed German first value for first user value for security in the first screenshot, right? Which means send money securely. So the safety aspect is respected and was the very first thing that they wanted to achieve. And so sometimes it seems so simple, but you need to understand your markets and your users and so on. So there's a big difference again between translation and going one step further or two steps further with localization or culturalization. But I know that you have even more insights for Europe.
Yeah, I think to add to your point on translation and localization, I also think it's important to mention how the Europe regulation is breaking up the duopoly of Apple and Google and so on. So basically, Europe are at the forefront of regulating. For example, with the Apple, they just made the USB-C cable mandatory, which helps a lot, right? So I think they're creating a more fair landscape. So what does this mean for fintech apps is apps can start distributing their apps on local app stores, different app stores. They can define their own security, and also their dependence on OEMs are bigger than you think. For example, if you take Samsung and Xiaomi, they reach around 45% of the market share in Europe. In Spain, Xiaomi is one of the biggest OEMs for over a quarter of the market share. So the mobile OEMs are moving in big numbers in the market, and they are also shaping out how Europe defines its strategy with the DMA, with the alternative app stores, and they're also shaping this out in Europe. So we need to wait and see how it evolves in the coming years.
Yeah, very interesting about Xiaomi. I didn't know about the percentage. I'm even a bit surprised. Emerging markets now. It's obviously a big thing for OEM, maybe the most obvious one. So that's why it's also nice that we started with Europe. What can you tell us about emerging markets?
So for the sake of this discussion, I think we put emerging markets as Southeast Asia in countries, India and LATAM as together. And then we give you an idea, we're giving you a reality and what are the expectations, right? Reality is most of these emerging markets, they have a large population of not having banks, right? And what does this mean? That means a lot of these partners don't have a bank account yet, a lot of these consumers. So the goal of the government and goal of these apps is to get as many people on a finance app for these markets, right? And how do you do that? Because unlike if you take Indonesia, for example, they have 250,000 islands or something around this. You cannot have a bank in every place of this, and it's also remote regions. So they are using smartphone penetration, and they're using the ability of smartphones to reach end customers to make them a bankable population. So this is one of the strategies here. And this is also from an expectation point of view, governments and the apps are trying to bridge the financial inclusion gap of people who have and don't have bank accounts, and trying to use the smartphone penetration. Because if you look at Southeast Asia, we have a massive smartphone penetration of up to 80%. India is around 700 million smartphones, which is the second biggest market globally. LATAM is 70%. So for these people, the easiest way to start a bank account is via the smartphone. And this is why apps and financial apps are supposed to be easy to set up in these markets. They need to look into bandwidth issues. They need to be able to do KYC when you don't have super fast internet and so on. All of these are localized issues which finance apps in these markets are solving to help get a majority of the population on a fintech app or a banking platform.
Yeah, it really makes the old banking system obsolete in those regions, right? So smartphone is probably the only way. You mentioned that, like if there is no laptop, no offices, there is nothing else, right? Yeah. Back to the 2025 report. A few things as well that we highlighted for emerging markets. So Japan, Thailand, and Brazil are huge when it comes to localizing and updating metadata. Few insights for the audience here. In Japan, it's very important to use Japanese. It may seem obvious, but it's not always the case. And have something that is super clean and minimalist for financial app. It's not the same for every category, but for financial app, it's very, very important. One that surprised me a lot was for Thailand, where most of the top apps in the finance category in Thailand are still using English. Obviously, if you have a product in Thailand, you need to add Thai. And here it's something a bit different than Japan. You need to have bold and vibrant colors. So it has to be lively if you want to convert people in Thailand. And Brazil, which is massive for LATAM, obviously, they're also mobile first. It echoes a little bit with what you said for Southeast Asia. And here, I'm curious to see if it's the same for you, but you need to show like some easy to use features. So you need to have a simple UX, show that it will be something very easy to achieve. Since again, maybe it's something less common. if you never had any bank account, you were you were never on your laptop, building some stuff, managing your account. So it has to be perceived as something easy to use with a very simple UX.
I think just to add here, right, Brazilian apps are also, this is why gamification on some of these apps there, they show, hey, click here, next step, how do you set it up? It's done to ensure that people are able to follow through and understand what they're doing.
A quick example as well on our side with cultural nuances. So there's an app in India, I assume you're familiar with it, Paytm. And so they had like, I think they did part of the job, right? So they use cultural numerical system, and I will probably butcher the pronunciation, but where 50 crore equal 500 million Indians, right? So again, the usage of those cultural nuances is, in my opinion, very important, right? And so here they also play with the value of security. So they mentioned in one of the screenshots, lightning fast, secure payments. And they also show that privacy is a priority, right? So they know that that is super important for Indian user. And so they address that in the third screenshot. So basically in the first three screenshots, you have a core must-have value for every Indian user.
Yeah, I think just to add here, like if you put 50 million in India, nobody would get it, right? Because it's so local, it needs to be localized and people need to trust. And this is why Paytm has put 50 crore, because it shows that there is a majority of people using it. And it also brings people saying, hey, 50 crore other people are using it, then I could also test it out.
Okay. If we want to challenge, and if we have some people from Paytm in the chat, do you think that they could even improve that by having some glimpse of local languages, except the numerical system?
Definitely.
Room for improvement then, Paytm, if you're listening. Next one is on you. I know that you wanted to give a comparison between CPI and CPA since the beginning of the webinar. Now it's your time.
Yeah, like I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, right? CPI was generally low, but the true cost of CPA is much, much higher. If you look at India as an example here, the first example is a wallet. The CPA is relatively low, $3. But what does the wallet do? It is just an app for you to transfer money from one bank account to another. So the onboarding is very, very easy. And this is why the conversion rate is pretty high. Also, a lot of these users, a lot of these apps give you cashback, first time benefits when you first onboard. So it makes the CPA much lower. If you take the second example, which is a loan app, wherein the CPI remains the same, but if you see the cost per acquisition is much, much higher. It's around 6 times what the CPA of the app is. And why is this the case? Because here, the company is giving out a financial loan to somebody. And for this, they need to be much, much, much more careful. So they need to do a KYC. They need to know whether the loan credit will be paid back and so on. So there is a much higher onboarding flow. And this is why we see much higher drop-offs here. So for the second example, again, the CPA is 3 times as high as what the CPI is. And if you look at the CPI to CPA conversion rate, it's much, much lower. And the last is the banking app in Indonesia, which is also very similar to the India. The conversion rate is around 2 to 3%, and the CPIs are also low, and the CPA is a little more higher because here you would have to do and digital KYC, and that's one of the key reasons. So the onboarding flow is different, but always look at your true customer acquisition cost rather than the CPI, because CPIs can be very can cover your eyes, and it can be very not the true story.
Yeah, that's again very important not to work in silo, right? So obviously, if you use platform and you do user acquisition, you need some real-time metric, and you need to have your own benchmark and so on. But then you probably need to have a team, or you, if you have multi hats, having some weight with the quality of the user that you bring, right? It's easy to bring a cheap user. You need to analyze what happens after.
Yep.
Thanks, Ash. North America. Again, I've played a little bit with OEM, so I know that OEMs are big for emerging markets. where does it leave North America and particularly the US? What's the market like for you?
To be honest, I think US is a very difficult market for the OEMs because US is mostly and iOS dominated, and to some extent Samsung, and Samsung is slowly building out their app store. So unfortunately, I wouldn't have too many insights for you here, but we'll see how it changes in the coming months and coming years.
Yeah, I figured like for us, like when we were trying OEM in US, it was always like very, very hard. A lot of successes in emerging market, but US was another thing. What we saw here at AppTweak is that we see a lot of similar challenges than Europe. So the main one, obviously, you mentioned them, it's about the regulation. In the US, it's so fragmented that sometimes it makes it even a state level sort of localization strategy that you need to have. What you see on the right is like, in terms of download estimate, Android is not too far from iOS, but the revenue generated by those downloads is clearly iOS, right? So the value of the user for category like finance is always sitting in iOS, at least for North America. And obviously, the other big similarity with Europe is that it's a hyper-mature market, even more to some extent. The competition is very high, the costs are very high, and I think it's obviously important for every region, but in the US, it's very, very important to be able to spot and capture directly some specific intents that the user may have, right? So that's why I have an example on how to leverage CPP, because it's key in a mature market to be able to answer a direct need, a direct intent, because usually the user know what they want, right? So they also know what they want to find. So CPP, for the one that don't know, it's custom product page. So what it does, it lets you offer an alternative store to your user, and you can target some specific keywords or intent. You can also use them if you do some paid on Apple Ads, and it gives you a lot of opportunity to answer those needs, right? So a bit of stats as well. We've seen that the apps utilizing custom product page have an average conversion rate uplift of 5.9%. The crazy stuff is like 4 out of 10 top finance app in the US are using them only, which is crazy when you see the uplift that you can have in your conversion. In the US, same as Europe, so they put a lot of focus on trust and security. So if you can use social proof badges, insignia, it's very important. And again, use CPP to capture specific intent. Success stories now. I think I'm keeping the mic for this one. I will start with a big one and what we've done on how a client did it using AppTweak. Binance, so massive crypto app for the one who don't know them. They have a challenge. Teaser alert, we all have the same challenge. They want more download, okay? So they needed to increase their organic the traffic, the impact that organic had, the ranking of their keywords. And so, oh, sorry, I went on the other arrow. The approach that we had was obviously a dual strategy, because it's very important to optimize the default page. But as I mentioned just before, it's very important as well to understand how you can maximize the work that you can do on conversion rate and try to capture additional visibility. Right? So here we really worked on those two things with Binance, and the results are I split them in two. Right? So the first one is everything that is around the research. Whether it's on the keyword or the market. We mentioned that it's very important to understand the market, but it's also very important to understand with data that you have at hand, what are the opportunities that you have. So for Binance, in that case, it was on the keyword. So how do you identify the keyword? And then how do you spy on competitors? So I have a little video here. I hope it will work. That shows... Oops. So this is our CPP Explorer, so the custom product page explorer, where you can actually spy on your competitor and you can see what they are testing, right? So how many CPP they have, when did they run the CPP for, how many versions did they try and A/B test, what are the keywords that they are targeting for the specific CPPs. And so that's obviously, all of this is part of the research section here. And then you move to something, again, more actionable. It's the CPP themselves. So after the research and so on, how do you localize and how do you create those CPPs? So in that case, I picked a very simple example. How do you capture intent on crypto? You know that you have big ones, Bitcoin, Ethereum. Those two are very easy and known from almost everyone. So you create different versions of the store to capture the intent of both. Obviously, then you need to monitor everything, report, and so on. Down the line, big success here. Binance gained an incremental 95K plus install, actually, in more than 1 year. Just because they understood how to capture and how to analyze like specific opportunities on the store.
Interesting. Yeah, so we also work with quite a few crypto apps, but I think for today's example, we will be talking about a buy now, pay later app called Credivo. So basically, Credivo is it's a fintech app based in Indonesia where they want to drive adoption of their credit services. Like I mentioned before, Indonesia is a country with a lot of islands, connectivity is low. So one of their challenges was, hey, how do we get our brand and our app to as many users where we want them to apply for a loan or apply for a particular service which they provide, right? So can you go to the next slide, Thomas? So what did we do when we mapped this out is basically, like I said, the Android ecosystem is from the lowest paying user to the highest paying devices and so on. So what we did was we first identified who would be a custom audience for these partners, right? For example, Credivo, which is a buy now, pay later app, we went to young urban users who are basically in college, who are just out of their first job and so on. And then what we also understood is buy now, pay later is a concept in Indonesia, which is where you can buy something today, and then within the payment of that app itself, you could go to another app and you say, hey, I want to pay in 3 different installments, right? And when does this happen? This happens on e-commerce apps, shoppers, and so on. So what we did was we worked with Credivo and we did some kind of appographic targeting where with the OEMs which we work with Xiaomi, Oppo, and Vivo, we can target users based on what apps they have on a phone. So for example, if a user has an Amazon app on his phone and he is within a social demographic platform where we can target audiences based on their age, gender, and so on, then we could build out different ad groups and so on. And then we could target users who frequently visited shopping apps and within this particular age group to help show them these the possibility of Credivo to encourage more downloads and encourage much higher conversion rates. It didn't make sense for us to go for the highest high-end devices because at that point, and older people, because these were not the right customers here. So this is what we did when targeting the right users. Can you go to the next slide?
Yeah, that's then the next one, I think. No? Right. The one there.
Yeah. So the other one was geographic targeting and device type. Like I said, we targeted users who were more younger, tech savvy, who were using content like Netflix and so on, because we knew these users who had Netflix and used user behavior targeting. We were able to build out ad groups and do specific targeting and ad campaigns for them. And this helped us acquire these right users. The last part is we used a bunch of different notifications, push notifications, featuring recommendations. For example, during in Southeast Asia, during the 9/9 and the 10/10, which are big shopping sales, we were doing exclusive pushes and push notifications and also splash interstitials for advertisers saying, hey, did you know if you buy on Shopee today, you could use Credivo to pay later. And this was how we did it. So in terms of the results, what we were able to drive was a 46% install to loan rate, which is pretty high. Given the fact there is a lot of rejection on loans, and we were able to grow their user acquisition on OEMs around 2.2x year over year. We also use preloads, which was able to drive new user acquisition. So what preloads does is gives the user the ability to gives Credivo the ability to be one of the first apps on the device, right? And this is very important for a fintech app. And then the last thing what we did was we were able to grow their year-on-year growth spending with us by around 4x.
Nice, impressive. For me, I think the craziest one is the 46% on install loan. If you consider the rejection, it's super high. We are almost at time, so I just want to leave the audience with a few key takeaways before we take 1 or 2 questions. The first one is like leverage the App Store to their full potential. So what I mean by that is, like, if you remember the first slide, there is app first and app supported. So if you are app supported, you need to understand the value of the App Store, right? It's first party data. It's an additional channel surface, even where you can just show what your product is doing. And so it should not be just a login page. So it's very important to understand all of this and be able to influence your product to go in that direction and to remove complexity of the multiple app and have everything under one product. Obviously, for the app first, how can you align the strategy to gain efficiency, understand the store specificities? And then when I say like leverage the App Store to the full potential, it's not just Google and iOS, right? It's all the stores. And that's I'm talking about OEM for you, Ash. I don't know if you want to add something here, but again, the stores now, it's not just Google and Apple. At least for some markets, it's very important to consider everything.
Yeah.
The second one is like to understand your users and the market, right? So the localization aspect is really key, specifically in that case for finance, where money is at the center of everything, right? So the users' value are super important. The market differences are very important. The country specificities are very important. One, I think CPPs is something that has to be leveraged. We see a lot of clients that are not doing it, and that's how you can capture that, and that's how you can build those very creative experience for every user, right? And we know that if you have consistency, if the experience is created, you will have better conversion rates. Third one is maybe more for you, but from where I stand, the user acquisition funnel is very important. So you need to understand your full funnel, even though you work just in part of that funnel, right? So you need to have a strong reporting that will show you everything. You need to have diversification. You need to have transparency when you work. Without that, for me, it's very hard to control your cost. As maybe a question to you already. When you're a traditional UA manager and you work with Meta, Google, Facebook, and so on, OEMs seem always a bit far from me. So it's not something that you usually have in your first strategy. How complex is it to manage for a UA manager that would be interested in it?
So I get this question a lot, right? We're very interested in OEMs, but we don't have the bandwidth, or it's very complex because each OEM is different. And I think this is where AVOW's approach of being a one-stop solution, where using us, you can tap into all different OEMs with full transparency. And also because we work with all of these OEMs and we work with more than 50 clients, we know what is required from a compliance, what is required from an optimization, how do you buy on these platforms? And we enable all of our partners not only to work on a CPI, but more down the funnel events like a CPA and CPE, CPFTD. And this is where I think it makes it a lot easy for advertisers to tap into OEMs. I think especially if you're in emerging markets and in Europe, OEMs is definitely a scalable channel. And it's also a very fraud-free channel, which is very important for user acquisition managers these days.
Yeah, agree. Last one for me, don't work in silo. I think it's killing efficiency. So that's more of a global statement for everyone. I don't know if we have people outside of the finance industry. This is very valid for everyone. Your user should not feel that you have 3, 4, 5 marketing team working on their funnel, right? It's one user journey, not 4 different ones. Consistency is really important, again, to improve your conversion rate and to decrease your CAC, your global cost of acquisition at every steps of the funnel, right? So the reason why also I want to mention that now and close with that is I've seen a lot of ISO managers that are almost forced to compare their work with a paid UA channel. And ISO has been considered as an organic UA channel since a while, but for me, it's way more than that, right? So it's a mandatory destination. So whatever is your media mix or budget you have or the spend you have, they will land on the store, again, if they're not doing OEM. So if you land on the store, you need to maximize the traffic that you generate with your company activities globally, not just as an organic UA manager. And that's it for today. We have 4 minutes left, so I will quickly check the chat and see if we have any question from the moderator. Okay, so Ash, I have one interesting one for you. We didn't talk a lot about fraud. Given the risk of fraud within the finance apps, how does AVOW ensure fraud-free user acquisition, specifically on OEM channels?
I think we need another 1 hour. If you
another
have
1 hour, you need to do it in 3 minutes.
No, but I think one of the reasons why OEMs are pushing heavily right now is because the OEMs own and operate the inventory, right? When it comes to their app stores also. So they are basically enabling discoverability on their own phones. And there is no reason for them to have fraud. And I think because of these app stores also being very stringent in terms of which partners they onboard and so on, they have much stricter rules when they want to onboard an app on their platform rather than the Google Play verification and so on. So given this and given the kind of placements and given the kind of inventory which enables discoverability, I think if you use OEMs, could tackle fraud, but it also depends on your advertising stack. I would say always use search, social, meta, ASO, and then OEMs. If you go into the affiliate space, then it becomes very, very messy, and then you're naturally fighting fraud.
Yeah, thanks. I'll try to take the next one that I see from Orion. How do you approach localization when you're unsure if the new market will perform? Is it worth customizing creative before there is volume? So in 1 minute, but again, we can also answer more in depth those questions. Feel free to reach out. For me, the answer is also in the question, right? So if you want to give the chance to your localization or the new market to perform, you need to consider localization. Right? So if you spend time launching a new market, thinking about launching a new market, you need to do that work and custom the creative before launching. Sometimes it's just like a small tweak. You have a lot of tools, not just AppTweak, where you can find information. Obviously, we have a lot of information on AppTweak at hand that you can use. It's just a small tweak. You give every chance for your new market to perform, and you will have more relevant data to analyze after your launch. Right. So for me, it's very straightforward here. And we are at time again. You will receive the recording of that webinar tomorrow, I think, with some content studies and blog posts and link and so on. Don't hesitate to contact Ash or myself on LinkedIn if you have additional questions or to answer the email that you will receive. Ash, it was a pleasure. Thanks a lot for spending that time. It was great to reconnect with you. Hope we can see each other soon. And thanks everyone for joining. Hope you like the insights, and we see each other next time.
Thank you, everyone. Bye. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, team. Bye.